Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Rapido have just released yet another brand new tank engine and it's quite an interesting looking loco this time. So join me, I'm really looking forward to this. Let's crack on with the full review. So in real life there was only ever 2 of these engines built, and that might make you think, why on earth is any manufacturer making these ready to run? Well, I think the reason is because the 2 engines in real life are so utterly unique and frankly bizarre looking, it's made them very popular. And so actually I think a model of these engines is a really good idea. And Rapido announced this back in November of 2023, I think it was, which means people have been looking forward to these models for over 2 years now. But finally they are out, and here is one of them. So this of course is one of the Port of Par Bagnall 040 tank engines. Rapido have done both of these engines in a variety of different guises, but I've just got the one. Maybe that's a little bit miserable of me, I don't know. But yeah, obviously Alfred and Judy are both available, and if you'd like to browse the range, affiliate links down in the description. Right, let's talk about price then. So the RRP for these tank engines is £139.95, and at the retailers you can pick these up for £118.95. Which actually, to be fair, considering this is a Rapido loco, seems to be quite reasonable. I don't believe I've looked at another Rapido loco, at least not recently, that was that affordable. Now obviously this is a small tank engine, it doesn't have that many features compared with some of Rapido's other engines, but still less than 120 quid for a new tooled tank engine. Seems rude not to give it a try, doesn't it? Anyway, how does this compare with other new tooled 040 tank engines? Well, it's not quite as cheap as the Dapol Hawthorne Leslie from a year ago. That was available for £107.40 at the retailers. So this Bagnall is £11.50 odd more expensive. But then if you compare it with Rapido's H-Class, again from last year, that was a small 040 that cost even more. That was £123.20 at the retailers. So this Bagnall is £4.25 cheaper than that. So price-wise, it seems pretty fair, assuming, of course, the quality is good. And that's the thing with Rapido. Quality a little bit spotty at times. Now with the last loco, the J52, the quality was dramatically improved. It wasn't perfect, there was still room for improvement that I hope this loco will take advantage of, but it was a lot better, so high hopes for this. Anyway, really looking forward to this. Let's find out, after over 2 years of waiting, what this Port of Par Bagnall tank engine is like. Alright, so a very tiny box, and as you can see from the front of the box, yeah, this was an incredibly odd looking tank engine, and it wasn't just needlessly odd either. There was a good reason for this look, and we'll get onto that later on. Anyway, let me reveal to you which version of this I went for. So I went for 968004. It is the Port of Par Bagnall Port of Par Yellow. There are also green liveries available too. Check out the range if you're interested. I've got Alfred, although as I say, Judy is available too. And I got the DC/silent version, although DCC sound options are available. You can buy the engines by themselves like this, or you can buy them as a pair in a train pack. Now, unfortunately, the price of the train pack is £237.95, which means there is no saving for buying both of these locos at the same time, which is a shame. I think if I could have saved £10 or £15 by buying both, I might be tempted to do that, but no, there is no cost saving there. You do get a few extras with the twin pack though. You get a presentation box, a postcard, I think, maybe an information booklet as well with illustrations. So you get a few minor extras. So if they float your boat, it's obviously worth buying the pack rather than buying the 2 independently, but I just went for the one. Anyway, enough waffling. Let's open up this box, which does have a film, well, a sleeve, I should say, around it, just to, I suppose, keep the lid on. Anyway, let's lift the lid. Not had this box open yet. It arrived yesterday, so I've saved it for the review. And here we have the manual. I'm really curious to see what's inside this loco. I've seen plenty of photos of the outside. Really curious to see the mechanism actually for such a small loco. So Port of Par Bagnall 040 saddle tank, there's your contents page, and then we have a bit of prototype history here. If you want to pause and read any of this, feel free to, although I will give you a bit of background on these in just a second. All right, a bit more history. Unboxing the model, yeah, that seems basic. Running in, that's standard practice. Fitting accessories. So what have we got here then? So we've got rear shutters, which you can glue on if you want to. We've got coupling options. It looks like there's a 3-link that you can add onto there if you want to. It looks as though we've got cab doors, a panel there that covers up the rear NEM pocket if you don't want a rear coupling. That's quite a nice thought, isn't it? And the option to add pipes and such. This is weird. If you want to take out the tension lock couplings, you have to remove the base keeper plate. I suppose that's just because of how short the loco is. Servicing your model, you can do this by removing the base keeper plate, so that's fine. At least that seems to be removable then. Blah, blah, blah. How to fit a decoder. So how does the body come off? It looks as though there are 2 screws underneath the running board. Oh, this seems a little bit awkward. Then you have to remove the cab by using a plastic spudger, which I think is that included? Hopefully it is. To pop the tab out from the back of the cab to release it. Then the saddle tank is affixed to the boiler by clips underneath. Use the spudger to ease the tank off the clips from both sides. All right, so yeah, hopefully this is going to come with said spudger tool, otherwise that's not good. And then you've got the E24 decoder socket inside there. Interesting choice of socket. And then DCC functions. This is if you buy one of the sound fitted versions. And then, yeah, apparently stay alive capacitors are pre-fitted, which is important with a tank engine of this wheelbase. Obviously, it's going to cut out on points if you're crawling over points without stay alive. And then on the back page there is the exploder diagram. And yeah, it's very, very small, but I can see what looks like a coreless motor and a flywheel. That's good to see, given the size of the engine. Everything else, I think it's going to be easier to see in person. So we shall get onto that. Right. Are you ready for the reveal? I know I am. Been looking forward to this one for ages. Oh, goodness. Wow. So here's the thing, right? I have owned a couple of these Bagnalls before, the Bachmann Bill and Ben, but those are much larger than this. So I never really realised how tiny these Bagnalls were in real life. They really are small. Fascinating. And incidentally, I think this loco is missing the firebox flicker effect? I'll have to double check when I look at this properly, but yeah, I don't think they could fit that in. So again, bear that in mind. That is a feature that's missing that the H-Class and also the Hawthorne Leslie, which was cheaper, did have. Anyway, let's have a look. So here are the accessories. So what have we got inside here? First of all, we have an etched Alfred nameplate. I'm assuming there's a pair of those, and that looks like a really good quality plate as well. So that is a brilliant inclusion. And then we've also got etched builder's plates as well, by the looks of it. Really, really good to see that. That is fantastic. Then we've got those accessories, painted cab doors, the rear hatches, whatever, vacuum pipes, couplings. Yeah, quite a good set of accessories actually. And I noticed we've got coupling hooks with 3 links and without 3 links fitted. So you've got the option. I'm not seeing the spudger tool though. So how exactly are we supposed to remove this loco's body? Might be in there. There's something rattling around. I don't know what that is. It might just be a coupling hook. Right, let me just triple check. All right. Yeah, that's a pity. If you need a specialist tool to remove a loco's body, said tool should be included. Seems like the basics, doesn't it? But I shall say it nevertheless. Right, what's that then? We've got a bit dropped out already. Well, I suppose this illustrates that the coal loads are removable. That looks to me like a little tiny coal load. Well, that's fine. I assume those are supposed to come out. So that's not damage, at least I hope not. Let's have a look at the loco's finish then. Here we go. Wow, it's a very, very vibrant little loco, this. Yeah, and the firebox is so, so strange. So the tanks kind of end, and then we've got the tiny firebox and then the wider cab. That is another reason why this loco would have been quite tricky to sort of put a mechanism into, because you've got this really thin section just in the wrong place. So yeah, totally understandable, I think, that this doesn't have the lighting. The fact that it has a motor and a flywheel and a DCC socket and a speaker, presumably, at least for the sound versions, and stay alive capacitors, Yeah, it's pretty darn impressive. Anyway, lifting. All right. So weight-wise, you know, it's not got the density of certain tank engines. I am thinking of the Hawthorne Leslie. And unlike the Hawthorne Leslie, the body on this loco is mainly plastic. So the cab, the tanks, those are plastic, which is a shame because there isn't a great deal of moulded detail on these tanks. And so if they were die-cast, this could have been a heavier loco for sure. But it does have the die-cast running plate, and the weight of this loco is not terrible. I mean, don't forget, this is a very, very small loco, so it's not going to be 500 grams, is it? Anyway, I'll pop it on the scales in just a second. What a bizarre and beautiful engine this is. Look how flat this is. Again, that makes this a challenge as well. There's much less height here than there is in other locos. So a fully working version of this is pretty impressive, it must be said. Anyway, we will of course take a much closer look at this loco and its details in just a second. But first of all, let's have a bit of background on these twins, even though I've only got one, in real life. Alfred and Judy, also known as the Port of Par Bagnall twins, are a pair of 040 saddle tank engines built by W.G. Bagnall in 1953 and 1937 respectively for use on the Par docks in Cornwall. Their extremely unusual appearance was due to them being designed specifically for that location. There was a very low bridge going underneath the Cornish main line, and since this bridge was only 2.4 metres tall, Alfred and Judy had to be designed to fit underneath it, hence their extremely flat and squashed looking design. Also, due to the extremely tight curves at the port, in fact I think there was one infamously tight curve in particular, the wheelbase for the locomotives had to be small in order to accommodate tight curves, so the wheels are actually set just 5 feet apart. There was also no inspection pit on the railway either, so the engines had to be designed to be serviceable without one, hence why the cylinders are on the outside. Both engines hauled China clay together for many years until they were eventually withdrawn from service. Judy was taken out of traffic first in 1969, and Alfred survived longer until 1977. Thanks to their iconic and unusual looking design though, both engines have been preserved at the Bodmin Railway, where they continue to operate to this day. Alfred and Judy's other claim to fame is the fact that they inspired the Reverend W. Awdry to include them in the Railway series, where they of course appeared as Bill and Ben. So there he is, Alfred, up close and personal for you, and the verdict is in. This is a really beautiful looking tank engine. The build quality is actually pretty good in terms of the way it's been assembled. Again, I'm noticing quite an improvement here. It's also very nicely detailed, etc, etc. We will get onto all of that in just a second. I have to say though, once again, from Rapido, this loco is coming across as quite cheaply made. Now here's the thing, usually with other manufacturers, with a loco that is this small, they can really pull out all the stops. Because of how tiny it is, they can focus their efforts onto making it excellent quality. And I can give you some examples. We've got the Hornby Peckett, which is cheaper than this loco, and they made that thing almost entirely out of metal. Then last year, of course, we had the Dapple Hawthorne Leslie, which I've already mentioned. Again, cheaper than this locomotive, mainly made out of metal, and it also had lighting and things like that. This Rapido locomotive is more expensive than both of those, and the quality that we saw on those two locos just isn't there. So instead of being almost entirely made of metal, we've got a plastic body, which is fine, but it has affected the weight. So this weighs in at just 84 grams, which makes it lighter than even your basic Hornby train set 040s. It is 45 grams lighter than the Hornby Peckett, even though the Hornby Peckett is the same length as this, it's just obviously a little taller, and it's 54 grams lighter than the Dapple Hawthorne Leslie. So both the Dapple and Hornby locos are half the weight of this again. But it doesn't end there. Once again, we've got plastic handrails. If these Rapido locos were cheaper than other brands, if these were budget models, I'd be all for this. But why are we seeing single-piece plastic handrails on locomotives that are more expensive than other brands most of the time? The Hornby and Dapol saddle tank engines I've mentioned both have wire handrails. Why doesn't this, given that it costs more money? Not a fan of that. Now, to be fair, they do sit straight on this model. One of my main complaints with previous Rapido locos that used plastic handrails was that they didn't sit straight and they were wobbly and such. These, to be fair, do look good, but again, when you're paying this kind of money, I don't expect to see cheap features like plastic handrails. A few other things to note: the coupling and connecting rods, they don't look great. They are made of metal. I know people are going to see these and think they're made of plastic. They are metal, but they've got this really dodgy sort of painted plastic finish to them. Although the sliders for the crosshead on the cylinder, those do have a proper metallic finish, so it kind of all doesn't really match. Yeah, it's not a great look. The other thing that I'm not too keen on are these couplings. So these are not your standard NEM couplings. They do adhere to a NEM standard, but they're not the typical one. So you've basically got your tension lock suspended on a tiny sliver of plastic, which is very easy to break, by the way. Ask me how I know that. They're not properly supported in their rotation, so their range of motion is really quite large, which of course puts that plastic under strain. And as you can see, the front coupling already isn't centering, and that's not because I've been testing the limits of it. It was like that straight out of the box. Again, with the Hornby and Dapol locos, they somehow managed to get proper NEM pockets onto their locos. Again, the pecket is the same length as this locomotive. So again, I ask, if other manufacturers can do it, why can't Rapido? Of course, this is fine if you just want to use the tension locks, but the whole point of NEM couplings is that they are interchangeable. So if you want to use a different kind of NEM coupling, well, you'd have to fit a pocket into this sort of dovetail connector, and as we saw from previous Rapido locos, this means that the couplings stick out way too far. And I have to say, looking at the underside of the model, this doesn't seem entirely necessary. With a different design, I think NEM pockets could have been fitted onto this loco. So for almost £120, I have to say this is built a little too cheaply for my liking. If this was £100, I think it would be more understandable, but if Rapido want to keep charging premium prices, and it looks like they do, I think they should deliver premium models. This is fine, it's beautiful, it's well detailed, it's nicely put together even, but to me it seems very cheaply made. 84 grams, that's not a lot. Anyway, let's take a closer look at this loco then. We'll start with the decoration, which is quite pleasant actually. So we've got the iconic yellow, of course, which is very unusual. Not many locos have this livery, do they? It's beautifully lined, yet the lining is done excellently. And of course we have the Alfred nameplate printed onto this, although there are etched versions available in the accessories pack, so you can fit those if you want. That's a good job because the builder's plate on the loco looks pretty bad, doesn't it? Yeah, the printed one, not good at all. So if that's not your cup of tea, do fit the etched one. In fact, back here from a distance, that just looks like a dummy plate. It just looks like an oval, doesn't it, of gold. You can't really make out any printing on that at all. So yeah, not the best. Thankfully though, there is an etched version available. We've got a few other lined parts. The side of the cab, as you can see, has lining on it. The cylinders are painted and lined as well. That looks really good. We've got the Port of Par lettering on the front of the saddle tank. That's exactly as it looks in real life, so that's pretty good. And then we've got the window frames, which are painted as well, and I might as well mention at this point, we've got the glazing pre-fitted too, which looks nice. Then of course the buffer beams are separately painted as well into the iconic red, which contrasts beautifully with the yellow. And then the underframe has this very unusual brown colour applied to it, which again is quite interesting to see. And then the wheels, I think the wheels look excellent. I think these are cast wheels, and of course they've got the lining on the outside, and you can see we've got beautiful moulding with the sort of centres and the lathe holes and the spokes and such. Yeah, looks really good. Just a shame about the coupling and connecting rods. One thing I really like about this though is the quality of the paint on the metalwork. With Rapido locos, I tend to find the smaller detail pieces like this, the safety valves for example, these look really good with this kind of paint. Not so much with larger pieces like the domes and such, then you can sort of see the graininess and the lack of metallic sheen. But with small parts such as the pipework here, this paint actually looks really good. Yeah, that's quite convincing. And same with the whistle. Yeah, nice separately fitted whistle, made of plastic, I think. But again, good quality paint there has saved those parts, which is really good. So right out of the box, the buffer beams are a little bit bare, but you can fit the vacuum pipes if you want, and you've got coupling hooks that you can fit and such as well. We do have sprung buffers on this loco, which is good to see. So yeah, quite impressive that they managed to do that actually. You can see on the back of the buffer here, the rear of the shaft poking out there. But yeah, the fact that they managed to make these sprung is really quite good. Very, very nice work. There is the smoke box door, which I believe is die cast. And ironically, this does have rivets on it and such. So the part that doesn't have the rivets, the tanks, that's made of plastic. And of course, rivets come out better in plastic. But then the part that does have rivets, the smoke box door, that does seem to be made from metal. Not that the moulding looks bad here though. The rivets still have come out nicely. And we've got a lamp bracket and the smoke box door handle pre-fitted onto here. We've got these little, I think, toolboxes maybe on the running plates, not correctly fitted. As you can see, this one's on the wonk and it's loose, so not ideal. But I think that's the only quality problem I can see, with the exception of the build materials used, of course. And then we've got the reverser. I'm assuming this is all the reverser system here, which is all modelled, and that really is quite intricate. I have to say as well, the fit and finish of the detailing on the top of the tanks does look really good. I assume then that maybe the chimney and the dome and such are just a part of the moulding and then they're painted where necessary. The filler for the tanks, that is a separate part, but the gap around that piece really isn't that conspicuous, so I think they got away with that quite nicely. Then of course we've got the little tiny coal bunkers. I did return the coal to, well, whichever one it came out of. Little tiny separately fitted coal loads in those. Again, this loco was for local work. It wasn't going miles and miles, so it didn't need massive coal bunkers. So you got these very, very cute tiny coal bunkers. Up on top of the cab, you've got the open vent here. Unfortunately, the vent is not posable. You can't open it or close it, but I suppose that has meant that this is quite low relief, so it looks a bit more realistic because of that. Then cab-wise, we've got quite a bit of lovely detail inside here. We've got paintwork on the gauges. That's quite impressive. We've also got a separately fitted regulator and pipework and such. No opening in the firebox, so this certainly doesn't have firebox flickering. But again, given the size of the loco, that is understandable. Although, again, it would have been nice if that was better reflected in the price, given that Dapol's cheaper Hawthorne Leslie, which weighs half as much again, did have that feature. But no, it's a very good cab, and because we've got this opening in the back of the cab, you can actually get a pretty good look at that. So there you have it. Yeah, it is a beautiful looking model. It's well painted and the fidelity in the detail is definitely there. I mean, look at the moulding on these parts. So yeah, it's good looking. I just think for the price, the quality is lacking a little bit. Plastic models are fine, but they should be a little bit cheaper than, you know, super high quality die-cast models. The fact that this costs more than similar saddle tanks from Hornby and Dapol is a bit of a travesty, in my opinion. Expensive models are absolutely fine, but they should be quality. This is all right, but it's not blowing me away, and I think I needed blowing away, really, for the best part of £120. But anyway, how will this run? This could win me over if I put it on the track and it's a delightful runner. I'm sure it will be. Delightful running is, after all, Rapido's hallmark. So let's get it onto the track and let's see if it is. So there is lovely Alfred down onto the track, and I have already tested his performance. I won't spoil that for you now, I'll show you that in just a second. After I ran him in, I took him apart to look at the mechanism, and I'll walk you through that now. Now, the mechanism I think is pretty darn impressive. Given the size of the loco, there's my hand, it is actually amazing that this model has basically every mechanical feature you would want in any loco, and yet they've managed to cram all of that into a loco of this size. It's not 100% perfect, and there's a few silly design flaws / omissions which I need to talk about, and we'll get to those. But yeah, on the whole, it's done really nicely. So in terms of pickups, this works basically exactly like the J52 does. So you've got plunger pickups which push against the wheels. It worked very well on the J52, and I have to say, it works very well for this loco as well. The base is quite easy to remove, just 3 screws on the base, and it comes off without needing to faff with any detail or anything like that. So Rapido are learning. That's really good to see. You can also see these dovetail connectors here. These are for the couplings. So yeah, strange coupling design. It is a pity that you have to remove the loco's base keeper plate just to exchange the couplings. It's only really Rapido that does things this way, and I'm not convinced it's absolutely necessary. Anyway, underneath the base you can see we've got separate bearings on each axle, which is really good to see, and it is the rear axle that is driven. You can see we've got some very, very fine gears here. Just like with the J52, the pickups seem to be installed into removable modules, which again for serviceability is quite good if you ever need to exchange one of these. So for body removal, I followed the instructions. The first thing you have to do is remove 2 screws on the base. Now with one of the screws, the screw just kept going round and round and it wasn't unscrewing. I will reveal why this is in just a second, because there is a reason. Now, Rapido failed to provide a tool for spudging off the body, which is a shame. You know, when you think about Dapol, they usually provide a tool if you need one. They always have a spudger tool for removing smoke box doors. They've even included metal nut spinners before so that you can exchange wheel sets for ones with or without traction tyres, whatever. If Dapol can do that with the price of their models, why can't Rapido with the price of theirs? So I tried to use a knife, but I didn't like that. I ended up using my fingernail, which worked absolutely fine, but again, it's a bit scary clawing at a model that you've just bought with a fingernail. So yeah, a tool would have been nicer. But anyway, the cab and the coal bunkers came off, and so did this. See this little cheap flimsy bit of plastic? This is one of the screw threads. Yes, that's right. This is the part that the metal screw is rammed into. Why is it so small and flimsy? Where is the separately fitted metal thread that this model should have? Yeah, this bit of plastic is 1.2 millimeters thick. What were they thinking? Who designed this and what did they expect? Yeah, that is not an adequately designed part to accept a metal screw. Looking inside the body, you can see the other ones failed as well, so that's not going to be doing any good. I mean, why? Why would you use such ineffective screw threads to hold on a loco body? I don't know, but it's not a surprise that failed. Anyway, the tanks were actually quite easy to remove. Again, I would have preferred a spudger, but I did get the tank off without too much trouble. The chassis itself is a really good design. Apart from that, frankly, insane screw design, everything else seems to be really good. So we've got the DCC socket on there. We've got a couple of capacitors. This is not the best stay alive system I've seen. We've just got 2 capacitors here, 2.7 volts, and they're 0.3 farad each. So not the greatest, but they will help the loco out getting over dead zones on points and that sort of thing. No doubt about that. There is a pre-fitted speaker just behind the smoke box door, as you can see. Again, amazing that they managed to cram one of these in. And then if I remove these screws on the circuit board, you can see we've got the motor here. So this is a cordless motor, quite a tiny thing, but it does run nicely. And it's got a pretty large flywheel fitted to it. Again, for the size of the loco, that is a formidable flywheel for sure. And then you can see we've got the worm drive here, which is positioned in that tiny little firebox, which does explain why there's no lighting. And sure enough, yeah, no LEDs on this loco. It's a shame, but obviously it's not the end of the world. And then the back-to-back gauging came in at 14.4 millimeters back-to-back, which is bang on the standard. So yeah, it's a great mechanism. It's got a good motor, it's got the bearings, it's relatively serviceable. It's just the design of the body removal. I mean, the fact that we need to remove the body in multiple pieces and we don't just have screws, we've got clips and things that need spudging off. It's all a little bit frustrating, especially when the screw threads seem almost as if they're deliberately designed to fail. I mean, again, what would you expect with a 1.2 millimeter loop of plastic which is expected to hold the body on? So yeah, I don't get that. I'm not a big fan of the coupling design. I think that could have been avoidable. But apart from that, yeah, it's a really good mechanism, and this does show through in the performance. So with that, let me jump back in time. Right, let's see how well Alfred works then. Now, I should say for this test, I have cleaned the track. just a once over, just the outside line, but full disclosure, I don't usually do this for every review. I do clean my track fairly regularly, but I don't do it before every review usually. I just decided to do it on this occasion so that we're giving this loco the best case scenario in terms of track cleanliness. And obviously with a wheelbase as small as this, that is kind of important. So if you are going to run locos like this, it is worth cleaning your track that little bit more often than you usually would. So the track is freshly clean. Alfred, I believe, is ready. Well, I hope he is. Let's give him his first bit of juice. Here we go. Forwards direction, turning up. He's moving. All right. No nudging, no banging on the ground to make him come to life. He started perfectly. All right. Let me show you 50% speed then, because the gearing looks really good. And that's half power. That's not bad at all, is it? So he runs quite sensibly, and he has just gone over the express point, albeit at 50% speed, but he didn't stop, so that's impressive. Let's have a look at the torque. Is there power here in the mechanism? Up to 50. Oh, if I don't pull the wheels off the track. Right, that's 50%. Yep, turning its wheels with loads of power there. That's really good. Obviously, it's not running yet, and it will need running in, but what is the crawl like? Let's find out. Here we go, straight out of the box crawl. Turning up slowly. Are we moving there? I think so. Yeah, we are. Wow. So Rapido had me a little bit worried with the J52. That loco did not perform that well. It was okay, but it's not as good as this. This, though, is back up to Rapido's usual standards. That is really impressive, and it's not cutting out. It has now cut out. Damn. I've been made to eat my words, but then again, it's not been running yet. Anyway. Oh dear. I banged the ground a little hard there. Right. One final test then. Let's put it over the points, see how it gets on at some slower speeds. And also let's see if the flywheel effect's there. Cutting off. Yeah, it doesn't stop dead, so yeah, definitely a flywheel. Okay, let me set up around the point. Right, so the dead zone is straight ahead, right there. Let's have a look. Let's go by at like 35. All right, so it did stop at 35. Let's go by at 40. It did stop at 40. Is it 50 it needs then? Yeah, so at 50% speed, at half power, it can survive over the points, which is not too bad given the wheelbase. Are both of the wheels over the dead zone at the same time? Yeah. So it is actually impossible for this not to cut out on the points at a slow speed. Obviously, the flywheel helps, and obviously, if you're on digital, those stay alive capacitors are going to help as well. On analog, though, you need to use smaller points, not the express points, or sort of points with electrified frogs, that kind of thing. Anyway, let's run this in. Let's see how it gets on around the track, and it will need a nudge. There we go. Alright, so to say it's only been running for a matter of seconds so far, I would say the performance is pretty impressive. It's crawled beautifully straight out of the box. The gearing and speed seems very, very sensible. It doesn't run too fast. It has cut out on the express points, but that's to be expected. I mean, that's just reality, isn't it? It's cut out once, having not been on the points, but that was before running in. I think I'll be surprised if it still cuts out after it's had 30 minutes in each direction, so not a problem with that. Plenty of torque. It seems quite reliable given the tiny wheelbase. You know, it's not cutting out at speed around the layout. Yeah, quite impressed, especially after that J52. I am very, very relieved and pleased with the performance of this. So I will run it for 30 minutes in both directions, and then we shall come back. I will find some wagons for this to haul, and we'll see how it behaves with a load. Right, don't go anywhere. I'll be back shortly. Alright folks, we are back, and that is running in complete. The first thing I'll say is that it does seem to have loosened up, because now, if I cut it off, it doesn't sort of coast or anything, but it doesn't stop dead. It was stopping more suddenly before, I think. Now I've noticed it does seem to coast a little bit more than it did, so it's definitely worth running these locos in. If not for the motor, then for the gearing and such, because yeah, it does seem to have loosened up with 30 minutes running. Anyway, has it sped up as well? Let's have a look. 50% speed. No, not appreciably. No, seems to be about the same. So the fact that this loco is so tiny and it has such a tiny gear train and such a tiny mechanism, the fact that it doesn't race along like an N-gauge loco is really impressive, and that, I think that will have helped the performance a lot because it's got good torque, as we've seen, and it does of course help the crawl, which we've already seen is really good, and I'll show you that in a second. But yeah, plenty of power there, power to spare, and the crawl was really good. Is it still good now that it's running? Should be. Turning up. There we are, it's moving. Is it? You see, I think I see it moving and then I'm not sure. Let's give it a little bit more to be certain. Yeah, it's definitely moving. It's astonishing. It's amazing. A real life loco probably wouldn't be able to do that. So if the model performs better than the real thing, I think we can give it a tick. Can we accelerate smoothly? Yes. And it cut out when I tried to do that last time. So running in again has definitely helped it. But yeah, it can go beautifully slowly. It really can. It's actually a mesmerising runner. So yeah, they've done a really good job. It's relatively reliable, not so much on the points, of course, but away from the points, it seems to latch on to every milliamp and it doesn't miss a thing. You know, it really does not cut out away from the points now, which is great. Anyway, let me pull this forward. Pulling power isn't the greatest. I mean, it weighs less than 85 grams, so it's not a surprise. I measured 0.08 newtons, which, to be fair, on straight and level track should allow this to haul about 9 coaches, so it's not hopelessly inadequate or anything. But the Hawthorne Leslie by Dapol, for example, is more than double that. So it's not a marvellous hauler. If you've got a flat layout and you're only going to be hauling 5 or 6 wagons or so, this is going to be absolutely fine. The lack of weight, aside from the disappointment it causes, but the lack of weight otherwise is not going to cause a problem. If you've got an incline or if you've got really tight curves and you want to haul maybe larger trains with this, I don't know why you would, but you might do. It's rule 1 at the end of the day, isn't it? Especially if you've got inclines, this is going to struggle a lot more because it is so light. A shame about that. But anyway, I have set up a sort of medium-sized goods train. I'm not going to do anything too massive because this loco's not really designed for it. But I think if it can haul these, I will say the pulling power does the job. So let's back up and let's test those couplings. Here we go. And I can make this take all day if I want to, but I'm not going to because that would not be fun. Right, let me see if I can do this bit slowly. Oh yeah, I can. Look at that. Started going slowly way too soon there. Right. Bit quicker. All right, couplings at the right height. Okay, yep, I think they are. So it is a shame. It is a shame that these are not proper NEM pockets because, again, most of the couplings I'm familiar with don't come with a sort of dovetail on them. So yeah, it's not really very useful, is it? But anyway, it's coupled now, so let's see what this looks like with a bit of a train, and hopefully she can haul this. And once it's coupled up to a train, you can kind of see just how flat and funny looking this loco is. It really looks like it's been stomped on, doesn't it? Anyway, there we are. Look at that. She's almost shorter than these very already short open wagons. Unbelievable. Anyway, I need to go faster, otherwise she'll cut out on the points. There we are. So I thought I would have a bit of a Port of Par running session today. How am I going to do that, I hear you ask? Well, oh, come on. Well, of course, using Thomas and Friends. So here are Bachmann's Bill and Ben, and seeing these just makes you realise how out of scale these are. Without having a real Port of Par Bagnall model, a proper one, to compare them to, I had no idea how large and ungainly these two are. But yeah, you can really see how much bigger these are. And yeah, they really don't run that well. You kind of have to run them together so that they support each other. Because as you can see, that's 50% speed. Nothing's happening. I don't know. So yeah, Rapido's miles better than the Bachmann mechanisms. But if you think the Bachmann Bill and Ben are big, they are nothing compared with Hornby's. Just look at this beast. Good Lord, I think I'll have to call this one Benzilla or something. It's absolutely massive. Look at it. In fact, let me bring the Rapido round so that you can see it next to each other. Here we go. Good Lord! Even I've not seen these next to each other yet. Yeah, it looks like someone inserted a straw into his ash pan and inflated him or something. Absolutely insane. What do you reckon? Double the size? It's got to be double the size. Double the height, easily. Absolutely crazy. Anyway, moving on. Oops. Why is that going backwards? I must have changed direction. Right. Off we go. All right, there she goes. I don't envisage this is going to have any problems, but let's just monitor it and see. No slowing down on the curves and no slowing down on the incline. So yeah, mechanically this is lovely. It's going to do everything you throw at it, I think, as long as you keep it reasonably realistic. It's not going to struggle. So that's really, really good. Yeah, on the whole, I really enjoy this. It's super cute because of how small it is. It's obviously very, very unusual because of its odd-looking design. It's modern, it's nicely detailed. Rapido have really captured the prototype beautifully, I think. It looks just like it. And obviously, as you can see, I can't fault the performance. That's really good as well. For me, the biggest downside is just the quality. It is a shame that these are so plasticky. Obviously, if Rapido existed alone in this industry, I wouldn't know anything of it. But having seen what the likes of Dapol and Hornby can do with small 040 saddle tank engines that are cheaper than this, I feel justified in saying that, you know, really the quality of this, given that it costs more than both of Hornby and Dapol's efforts, I think it could have been a little bit better. The plastic handrails are a real shame, and looking at those handrails, I don't see any reason why they couldn't have used wire ones. It's significantly lighter than other saddle tankers, and you know what, because this is such a small, squashed looking loco, it really needed those die-cast saddle tanks more than the Peckett or the Hawthorne Leslie does, but it hasn't got them, and that's a shame for the money, I think. Otherwise though, it is a beautiful job. The paintwork just pops, and the others look great as well. Obviously I've got the yellow one, the green examples, they look beautiful as well. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with this. It's a shame that it's not perfect, and there's definitely, again, room for improvement. But on the whole, I think Rapido have done quite well with this. And I think those that have been wanting one of these for years and have been asking for them, I think they will be pleased. I think if this is something you want, I would probably go for it. Time for some ratings then on Rapido's brand new Port of Par Bagnall. And overall, I really like this. I've enjoyed looking at it. It's quite nicely done. It's a decent loco, this one. It's not perfect, and there are parts of it that are not designed to my taste, and part of me wants to sort of shake Rapido and say, come on, you've been doing this for long enough now, it's time you were matching what other manufacturers were doing. But on the whole, in terms of the way it looks at least, this is a great loco. So detail, I've given it 4-star. There is a lot of great stuff here. The accessories are good. You've got loads of separate parts that you can add if you want. This includes really good quality etched nameplates. That's great to see. Lots of different coupling options, real scale couplings, that is. Great molded detail on this loco. The paintwork on the whole looks really good. Up close you might have seen it's a little bit spotty in places, but these are really not things you notice in person, at least not with your eyes. It's got a beautifully detailed cab and sprung buffers. It doesn't get 5-star because it's missing lighting. Perfectly reasonable, perfectly understandable why the lighting isn't here, but there are other cheaper locos that I've mentioned today that do have lighting, so I think it's only fair to mention that. Also, the finish of some of the parts, such as the coupling and connecting rods, not particularly good. If you look at other manufacturers' locomotives, these parts do look a lot more realistic. I know they're not plastic, but they look like painted plastic. It's not a premium look, in my opinion. So 4-star, otherwise though, really, really good level of detail. Performance, I'm pleased to say, is really, really good. This thing crawls beautifully, the gearing is very sensible, it runs at a smart speed, it doesn't struggle with a load, it doesn't slow down on curves, it does occasionally cut out on points, which is why I haven't given this 5-star. That's to be expected, of course, and it's not really that fair to run this over express points, but because other locomotives I've got don't cut out on points, and I like my reviews to be comparative, I am going to knock off 1/2 star for that. Otherwise though, performance is great, even the crawl is really, really impressive. Pulling power really could have been better, so this weighs in at just 84 grams and its tractive effort is about 0.08 newtons. That's only about 9 coaches on straight and level track. So that's the same as the Hornby Beetles 040, that's a toy, and it's about half of what the Dapol Hawthorne Leslie can manage, even though that was a cheaper loco, but because it's so much heavier, the Hawthorne Leslie is far more powerful. So it's not bad, and in terms of what you'd expect this thing to haul prototypically, it's absolutely fine, but it is a shame, I think, that it is so light. A little bit of extra weight would have made this much more powerful. Mechanism then is really good. I've given this 4.5 star. It's got all of the excellent features you'd want. So all-wheel pickup, proper bearings on the driving axles. For the most part, it is serviceable. It's serviceable in terms of getting to the axles and the pickups to clean those, so that's okay. Getting the body off is a bit of a pain though. It's a shame that no tool could have been provided in order to spudge that cab off and to unclip the tanks, because using your nails and knives, it's not quite as ideal. You can be more precise with a tool. I think a tool would have been a nice inclusion, so that's why it doesn't get 5 star. Slight issue with serviceability there, getting the body off. Those inadequate screw threads, again, not really good enough at this sort of price, because taking the body off once has rendered both of these screw threads totally useless. Again, whoever designed this really should have known better than that. But the motor, the flywheel, those are all really good. It performs beautifully when it's actually on the track. Quality then, this is where the model falls down a little bit. So the build quality generally is pretty good. I did notice a few loose parts though. It turns out one of the plastic handrails isn't fitted properly over on the other side either. Everything stayed on it though, nothing's dropped off. On the whole, the build quality is okay. The actual build of the model though leaves a bit to be desired. For £120 I was not expecting a plastic body, and I don't really see any reason why the tanks couldn't have been made from metal. That would have made the weight a lot closer to similarly priced locomotives, such as the Hornby Peckett for example. But because most of the body is plastic, it's much lighter than other locomotives in this kind of form factor. It does have the die-cast running plate though, which is good to see. And again, don't forget those screw threads. Can't give it a higher score on quality with things like that going on. So value for money then, the full RRP for this is £139.95. I have to say, for a relatively basic tank engine that is pretty small and light, that is a lot of money. For that amount of money, I would not expect to see plastic handrails, I would not expect to see a plastic body, and I would expect to see a better design in terms of body removal and decoder access. The retailer price is obviously better, £118.95. That is better. It's obviously one of the cheapest Rapido tank engines you can get, so that is good. But obviously other manufacturers do exist, and other manufacturers who have created tiny 040 saddle tanks have offered better value for money. They have offered more features, and they have offered more weight. So I don't think the value for money here is great. It's not a rip-off or anything, but it's far from a bargain. So 3 star, it's okay, but it's not the greatest value tank engine out there. Far from it, in fact. Overall then, that is 7.99 out of 10, or a grade of B, so it's come out pretty good. I do like this, and you know, I have been quite harsh, I suppose, on some of the downsides. That's because I think they are unnecessary and quite easily solved, but they are just a few minor downsides. On the whole, I think it's a really, really beautiful model, well deserving of a grade of B. So into the logbook it goes then, 22nd place there, just above the Hornby Royal Scot and below the Hornby Princess Royal. Yeah, so if this was going to do better, it would need to be a little heavier, it would need to do away with the plastic handrails. I expect metal at this kind of price. An improvement to the coupling would have been nice. These are some of the things that the loco falls down on a little bit. Overall though, would I recommend this loco? Yes, I think I would. Rapido have done a pretty decent job of it. Alright then folks, well that will just about do it for this review. Thank you very, very much for watching. Yeah, I think Rapido generally, with their last couple of releases, have made big improvements. Yes, I've said this is not perfect, but again, compared with the likes of the Pannier tank, compared with the likes of the 01, this is higher quality, generally speaking, and it is much more serviceable. Serviceability is something that we've seen Rapido massively improve really over this past few weeks. yeah, it makes such a big difference. And if this tiny little loco was an absolute nuisance to take apart, then it would really be a nightmare, wouldn't it? Because how are you going to keep this thing serviced? Tiny 040s with short wheelbases really do need to be maintained. You have to be cleaning those pickups. You have to be making sure they're well lubricated. Thank goodness that Rapido have made that easy with this loco. That's a really, really good move, I think, on their part. Yeah, it's a beautiful model. Really, really enjoying this. And honestly, I'm a little bit annoyed that I didn't buy the second one to make up the pair of twins. Maybe that's something I'll have to do. You know, hopefully they don't sell out immediately as well. Although I'm sure they might, because this is going to be popular, I think. But anyway, yeah, let me know what you think. Have I been too harsh? Have I not been harsh enough? Please let me know your thoughts. For now though, thanks ever so much for watching. Affiliate links in the description if you'd like to buy one for yourself. Obviously, Christmas not far away, so treat yourself if you fancy it. I'm a bad influence. I do hear that all the time. I apologise. But yeah, thanks for watching, folks. You take care. Cheers, everybody.